the modern workplace in Microsoft 365 is is an environment that allows people to work uh, anytime, anywhere, obviously, and on any device. Now, the anytime, you should not mix that up with all the time, right? You can work whenever you want, wherever you want, and on any device. Also important for the modern workplace is that it's all about being productive, also about being well, creative in your work. Um, very soon, Microsoft 365 will contain the Copilot feature, which is the AI part of Office. And that should also help you become way more creative because all the repetitive works are going to be automated. So you could spend your time being creative in your solutions. Another another thing that is a big part of the modern workplace is that it has to be a secure environment. Oh, you know what is really nice? My girlfriend is now walking around here and putting a fan. That is really nice. Dankjewel. This is so nice. I yeah. So it's oh, that's dankjewel. Yeah, super. Yeah. Do you guys hear a fan blowing in the back? No? Good. You know, Zoom is really good. Dankjewel. So that's, oh man, that's so nice. It's so warm here. So this is all about security as well. Then also, do you know what Microsoft Viva is? Just a quick check. No, for those people who are not sharing the video feed, you can respond to my questions with, I don't know, thumbs up, thumbs down kind of gestures. Um, although sharing your video is the nicest thing. But have you gone, do you know what Viva is? Microsoft Viva? If you don't, it's all about the human being behind the IT. So one of the major pillars of Microsoft Viva is that people should have an ease of mind. A workplace should be inclusive, obviously, um, and and if you don't really know Viva, then maybe you can check your mailbox. In your email box, you will probably get an email saying that you could spend some time scheduling focus hours, right, to get things done. Sometimes you get these breathing exercises as a suggestion because you're about to start a presentation or something. That is what Microsoft Viva is. Also important is that a modern workplace is compliant with regulations that governments or industries um, are dictating you to follow. For example, here in Europe, I'm in the Netherlands, we have the GDPR, which is all about personal data not being leaked. Well, that is exactly what those rules are all based on compliance. The course that we are going to do in these next few days um, is all about the bottom three items. So when we think about this, any device should be able to work in a secure and compliant way, then that is exactly what we are going to touch in the next 3 days. Now, starting with this any device thing, if you think about device management, then we could start thinking about, okay, and what devices would that be? Well, first of all, when we think about any device, at in Microsoft 365, that could be related to the operating systems that you might run. Obviously, Windows being a very important one. Mac OS is a very important one. Some people like to work with Linux. Sometimes people are well, they use Chrome OS. I was about to say sometimes people are stupid enough to use Chrome OS, but that's just my personal feeling. Um, as you will notice in the next few sessions, I am not a big Google fan. I use Bing um, because, well, it works for me. And it's super fast because probably I am the only user. But it's good. So Chrome OS is something you might like to use. Obviously, Android and uh, iOS slash iPad OS. Apple makes us think that these are two different operating systems, but from a management perspective, they are exactly the same. Um, iPadOS is just optimized for larger screens than iOS is. So this is, if we think about any device, then Microsoft says, well, you should be able to work on any of those operating systems. Doesn't matter what your preference is, just use whatever you want to use here. Another way to look at any device is in a way that a device could either be a company owned, or a device could also be personally owned. And then the question is, what do we want to do with, well, these types of devices? When it comes to personally owned devices, then we can pretty much always say that this device is a personal device, which basically means for personal use. And we can also tell that this is, well, this is what is part of your bring your own device situation. So people could buy a phone themselves and try to access company resources from that device. Maybe you do the same thing with your phone. If your company gives you a, I don't know, Samsung Galaxy S5 or something as a device, then the first thing that you will do is run to a local store and buy a decent phone. But that decent phone is something that you've paid for yourself, personally owned. And then the question is, to what extent do you want to allow the IT organization to be in charge of what is going on that device? Probably as the owner of the phone, you don't want them to use anything or to control anything. If a device is company owned, so the organization that you work for is handing the device over to you as a worker, then we still have two options. One option is that in that case, the device could be corporate. Also, the device could be personal. And when we think about that, if we think about this, when I think about a personal device, I think about devices that, being a user, I think about devices that are that fit in my pocket or fit in my backpack, and I take them home when I go home. So, for example, I would say that a phone or a tablet is personal, but also a laptop could be personal, right? So in this case, a laptop, or let's say a mobile device like a phone, tablet, I would say, hey, this could be personal devices. Corporate devices are devices that are, well, pretty much stationary. For example, you could be thinking about kiosk PCs. You can think about computers that are at the reception desk in hotels, for example. There is different people signing into that, but the device is never moving. Sometimes those corporate devices are sort of bound to something else, like mounted into a truck, right? In here in Amsterdam, or here in Amsterdam, I don't live close to Amsterdam, but let's say here in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, there's an organization who is um, they pick up garbage for other companies, and they have little trucks driving around the city. And in those trucks, there is iPads mounted into there. So it doesn't really matter who the truck driver is. The iPad is always there, and it only runs one type of software, which is the route calculation of the next destination and the things that that truck driver has to do at that destination. In that case, because there is not a individual that always uses that device and will take it home at the end of the day, that would be also a corporate device. Typically, we would say that company-owned devices like these, company-owned devices, they should be managed. And managed in this example means part of Microsoft 365, managed with Intune, developer endpoint, and so on. Where personally owned devices like these, they typically go unmanaged, which means that there is no IT department regulating what is going on those devices. Still, I think, and well, many organizations do. Still, we want to make sure that our organizational data, wherever it goes, is being protected. And that is something that we can also do on personally owned devices. I will show you later in this course. But in Microsoft 365, there is a component which is called MAM, short for Mobile Application Management. And this allows us to control organizational data in applications that are running on devices that are unmanaged. So for example, we as the IT organization could disallow users to copy and paste text out of Outlook into an unprotected environment, like a LinkedIn app, for example. So we can actually take control on the data, even if we do not control the device. If we think about managed devices, well, in managed devices, we have a couple of options. One of the components is MDM, which is short for mobile device management. And what we can also do next to mobile device management is we can also form, well, I'm going to shorten this to, no, let's just write it down like this. We can also do threat management. Now, when we think about MDM, MDM is just a generic generic way to explain what we do if we need to control the device. But controlling the device in Microsoft 365 is more than just Intune. As you will see soon enough, Intune is actually just a very small piece of the entire solution. So what we are going to do is we're going to discuss what that means. So what does mobile device management mean within Microsoft 365? So what we could do is we could, for example, well, we could take a device here. Let's say this is a device. And let's say that this device is a managed device. And in this case, it doesn't really matter what kind of device. Doesn't matter if it's a Windows, Mac, Linux. It doesn't matter if it's corporate or personal. It's a managed device. If we look into that managed device, then in Microsoft 365, there's actually quite a few components that are involved in order to control or manage that device. And one very important component that that you might be familiar with is this database, which is called Azure Active Directory. Very often we also shorten this to AAD, just to save some time here. Azure Active Directory is the directory service that you could, well, recognize from your on-prem IT environment, like the legacy Active Directory domain service. Well, in Azure we have Azure AD. If you have a device if you have a device that needs to, well, work with Microsoft 365, then this device could be, depending a little bit on the situation, it could be so-called Azure Active Directory joined. Azure Active Directory joined is a Windows only configuration. If a Windows device is Azure Active Directory joined, when a user signs in into the device, Windows will create a profile for that user in that device, and every application that you run in that profile is running with the credentials that have been verified with Azure Active Directory. A device could also become Azure Active Directory registered. If a device is Azure Active Directory registered, that would mean basically any operating system could be Azure Active Directory registered. Then instead of a user signing in into the device, into a profile, a user only signs in into an individual application. We are going to dive a little bit deeper into that part at a later stage, but this is just, when it comes to Azure Active Directory, when a user needs a device to connect to, well, Azure Active Directory protected resources, then, well, either the device has to be Azure Active Directory joined or Azure Active Directory registered. Now, this device is managed, and that means that in Microsoft 365 there is a couple of products that are now going to be involved. One product that is an important product for managing devices in Microsoft 365 is indeed Microsoft Intune. Microsoft Intune is the mobile device management solution in Microsoft 365. It contains a database, and Intune contains a component which is called the company portal. The company portal is the component from the service side of things that, oh, maybe let's take a different color in, that is responsible for communicating with a client component, and this client component here is the mobile device management client. In Windows, the mobile device management client is part of the operating system. It's a setting. In other operating systems, the mobile device management client is something you need to install as an app. For those people that are located in Norway, I think it's called the Firma Portal. That is, for those people who do not speak Norwegian, it's Norwegian for the company portal. And I'm not sure what it's called in Sweden, but I would guess Firma Portal comes quite close, or Bedrijfsportal or something like that. That is something you could also be checking out. Right? So there's a setting here. The mobile device management client, Windows, it's a setting. Other operating systems, it's an app you need to install and configure. Now, Intune is responsible for mobile device management. And well, if we think about mobile device management the Microsoft 365 way, then this is where, for example, we can do some remote administration of devices. For example, we can take over the user screen and then help the user out. If the device needs to be wiped remotely, we can do that. If we need to reboot the device or rename the device, or if we need to locate, in some cases, the device, then well, that is something that you could be doing from the Intune portal. Also, mobile device management is about managing the configuration of devices. So you can use Intune to configure the devices. Now, I'm not really sure about how old you are in this joining this training, but you may be old enough to memorize group policies. Probably you do. It's all on-premise kind of IT. Group policies is the, let's say, to Microsoft nowadays, old-fashioned way of doing device management. However,
still better sometimes.
Well, yes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes we are going to actually we are going to take some time in this course to sort of compare group policies with what Intune can do. And then what you'll notice is that, well, just to give you a little cliffhanger, group policies can do like 3 times as much settings than Intune can do. The question only is, do we need that? But we'll answer that question later. So we can configure the devices. Another thing is that we can deploy stuff. We can deploy applications using Intune. We can deploy updates using Intune. Also, we can monitor for compliance. So we can do some compliance monitoring. And what we mean with compliance monitoring is that we can check if the devices that we are managing are compliant with the security related settings that we find important for our devices. For example, you could check whether BitLocker is enabled for Windows, or for macOS it's called File Vault. Or you could, for example, check if anti-malware is active and up to date. That is something you could verify. Verify if the operating system is up to date enough, whether or not the firewall is enabled. Those kind of typical security settings or security components of client operating systems could be verified whether or not they are active and updated and well configured. That is what compliance monitoring do. This is what Intune does. Intune is also responsible for mobile application management. When we think about mobile application management, we could, for example, create application protection, or we can also do some application configuration. The coolest part about mobile application management is that it works for both managed as well as unmanaged devices. So when we think about a device being managed, then also mobile application management is something we can do here. There is only one downside about mobile application management. Mobile application management is an Android or iOS/iPad OS only solution. Mobile application management is designed for iOS and Android, and it doesn't work for any other operating system. So as part of this course, we will also be looking into what would be the ultimate way to manage bring your own device scenarios. We are going to spend some time on that. And then, well, for iOS and Android, we can implement mobile application management. For other operating systems, we need to figure something else out, which, you know, trust me, I already figured it out, but we'll just have to discuss it. That is what we can take. So Intune is one component of the modern workplace in Microsoft 365. If you want to manage Intune, then you want to be at intune.microsoft.com. This is the official portal for managing Microsoft Intune. Azure Active Directory, by the way, if you want to manage Azure Active Directory, then you want to be in entra.microsoft.com. That is the official Microsoft or the Azure Active Directory portal. There is more. You can see there's a lot of white space on my screen, so there must be more. So let's just check out the next part, or the next component. This next component, also part of Microsoft 365, is it's called Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. From now on, I will be shortening this to MDE, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is also a product that has a database, and it also has a component to communicate with clients. This component is typically called the MDE service. And the MDE service is responsible for communicating with the client component, which is called the MDE sensor. If you check out the, so if you check this out, it's actually these two components, they interact with one another, just like this. This is their communication line. And what Defender for Endpoint is all about, Defender for Endpoint is about threat management. Threat management here is two things. ASR, which is short for attack surface reduction. We have EDR, which is short for endpoint detection and response. Maybe for now it would be nice to write that down. So let's do ASR is attack surface reduction. And then EDR is endpoint detection and response. That is the two components that make up Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. However, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint also has something else that I think is cool. It can do user and platform control. Platform in Microsoft is just another word for an operating system. So that's just another word, but we can do user and platform control. Just to give you an idea, we can use Defender for Endpoint to disallow users to browse certain websites. So if, for example, like me, if you really intensively hate the website WeTransfer, and I have good reasons. So if you hate WeTransfer, you could disallow your users to navigate to that website. And you can do that using that Microsoft Defender for Endpoint sensor here, which is located on the device. Now, like the mobile device management client, the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint sensor in Windows is a service that needs to be enabled and configured. For any other operating system, again, it's an app you need to install and configure in order to, well, make it work. That is a nice extra. So we can do attack surface reduction, which basically means it comes up with a lot of, well, recommendations that we can follow in order to, well, close down the machines a little bit better, so attacks are less likely to succeed. That is attack surface reduction. If an attack still succeeds, then we need to be able to detect it. So that is the detection, and we need to be able to respond to it. That is the response part. Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is I think a super important component for managing your devices, because it gives you a great level of control on what is going on the device, and it performs real-time protection. One of the nicer things about the different products here is that these different products, they also communicate with each other. So, for example, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and Intune, they exchange data, and one of the implementations for exchanging that data is that in the part of endpoint detection and response, Defender for Endpoint may recognize that a virus is active for or on a device. Then if that virus is recognized here, Defender for Endpoint can exchange that information with Intune, and Intune at that point could go in and say, hey, you know what, that device is, well, under attack, so therefore we are not considering the device to be compliant anymore. So it's not okay with our security expectations anymore because there's a virus there. That by itself doesn't mean anything for the device or for the user, but in Azure Active Directory, we can work with technologies like conditional access to, for example, disallow access from devices that are considered non-compliant. So if a virus is found on a device, then for Endpoint can tell Intune. Intune can then mark the device as no longer compliant. Azure Active Directory can take that information and disallow access to, for example, SharePoint and Teams and Yammer and Exchange Online for email and so on. If you need to manage Defender for Endpoint, you want to be in this website, this portal, which is security.microsoft.com. Yet another portal. Now, think about my website, the mother of all portals. The problem was there are so many portals, therefore we needed a mother of all portals, and that is my website. So we have Intune, we have Defender for Endpoint being important for this for the managing the device. Another product that is interesting here is another product is called Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. So we're going to so Defender for Cloud Apps, or we shorten this to Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, is a product that, well, first of all, Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps is not an E3 product. Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps is an E5 product. So in your Microsoft 365 licenses, one of the components is Defender for Cloud Apps. It's an E5 thingy. Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps is, it has a database. That database is called the Cloud Application, and it's a Cloud App Catalog. And in this database, we have all kinds of information about cloud applications. So a cloud application is an application that you can reach via HTTP, right? Or HTTPS kind of application. So if you can reach the application via the internet, then we consider the application to be a cloud app. And in the cloud application catalog, we are going to put in some some general info about the device, but also about the app, but also Microsoft writes down information about security in the application. It writes down information about compliance. Also, it writes information about what is legal, what the legal parts of those applications are here as well. Now, if we think a little bit further, think a little bit more about what cloud apps are, then if you look into Azure Active Directory, then Azure Active Directory is one of those products that is here to allow us to, that allows us to access in a secure way. Whoa, I didn't want to do that. To access in a secure way, well, so-called cloud applications. The cloud applications that we can say, these are apps we want our users to use. And these kind of applications, they are applications that in Azure Active Directory are named in Azure Active Directories. These are what we call enterprise apps. Just to give you a look on what that means, maybe a good thing now would be to open up a browser. My browser. Let's say I want to be in my Azure Active Directory environment. So this is my Entra Administrative Center. This is if you're new to Microsoft Entra. Entra is about managing identities. That's basically it. Managing identities, and well, part of managing identities is Azure Active Directory. And for example, if you check out Azure Active Directory and then check out the list of enterprise applications here, then here you will see a list of applications that can use Azure Active Directory to sign in into those applications. And obviously, obviously let's say the Microsoft applications are here as well. So for example, you could think about Office 365 related applications. If you think about Office 365, you could be thinking about Exchange Online or SharePoint Online, and OneDrive for Business, for example, Teams. You could think about Yammer. Actually, Yammer is no longer called Yammer now. Yammer is now called Viva Engage. Well, anyway, you could think about those kind of applications. You can also think about Dynamics 365 stuff. Now, I'm not. Are you into Dynamics? If you have the chance to work with Microsoft Dynamics, don't. It sucks. You don't want to be involved in that. I don't really know what it's about. It's like ERP kind of systems, CRM kind of systems. Nobody cares. Actually, even Microsoft doesn't care because they are laying off everyone within the organization who has anything to do with Dynamics, except for the creators. So, well, don't get involved in that. Also, you could be thinking about the Microsoft management APIs. APIs always sounds cool. An API is an advanced programming interface. Basically, APIs are used to connect for management purposes with Microsoft environment. So, for example, entra.microsoft.com, security.microsoft.com, Intune.microsoft.com are web apps that use APIs to connect into the management layers of the environment. But also PowerShell uses this, or other third-party solutions that connect to your Microsoft 365 tenants. They all use those APIs. These are cloud applications, but it's not just Microsoft. Obviously, you can see here Office 365 Mail or Power Apps or a lot of stuff here like Windows Virtual Desktop. But you can also see that that there's also other apps that you can use as cloud applications that we want. So in Azure Active Directory, we can, for example, also protect or manage access to third-party applications. Microsoft always comes up with the same examples. Salesforce is one of those examples, or ServiceNow is one of those examples. I use Sessionize every now and then. It's just a third-party app. As you can see here in my list, it is listed here as an application in my Azure Active Directory. And because of that, if I want to sign in into, typo. See, I should have been drinking more coffee. So this is a third-party app. It's not mine. It's not Microsoft. Therefore, it is third-party from the perspective of Azure Active Directory, obviously. If I click login here, then Sessionize is one of those applications that allows their own, let's say, classic sign-in, which is the sign-in that they own, their own database with usernames and passwords. But they also have programmed this application to allow Twitter, this one here, and Facebook to sign in, but also Office. And if, for example, I click the link for Office, this will actually use my Azure Active Directory user object to sign in into Microsoft or into Sessionize. And I'm already signed in into my browser, right? So I have my browser signed in already. Therefore, if I just click the Office 365 link here, I can put my hands in the air and you will see it goes connect and sign in via Microsoft, single sign-on, you could say. And now I'm signed in into the app. This is exactly what a third-party app can do third-party cloud app, I can do with this Azure Active Directory. So I can use my Azure Active Directory user object to sign in into a third-party application. Also, we can use something called line of business applications, very often shortened to LOB for line of business. These applications are applications that you could say are self-owned or self-hosted. The idea behind this is that you can use an application that you have created yourself, or that an application that you are hosting in your own data centers. You can still use Azure Active Directory for users to sign in into those applications. That's the idea behind line of business. So it doesn't have to be hosted by a third party or Microsoft, even your own applications, as long as they are connected via HTTPS, then that is something you could do. Now, these applications that are in Azure Active Directory, known as enterprise apps, are typically the apps that we want our users to use. Defender for Cloud Apps is about well, apps we may not want our users to use. We don't know yet because we don't know what applications our users are using, and that is where Defender for Cloud Apps comes in. We have a catalog here that says, hey, we know all these applications. Today there is over 31,000 different cloud apps that Microsoft has investigated. So that's where it starts with. And then and about these apps, when it comes to the cloud app catalog, it also monitors let's say, cloud app use. So this allows us to monitor whether or not applications are used within the organization. And if it's an application that we don't want, we can choose to unsanction an application, which means we can disallow users to use the application. There is just one small minor problem here, and the minor problem here is that Defender for Cloud Apps doesn't have communication with the endpoint, with the device. But the way that Defender for Cloud Apps is connecting to the device is by, well, also putting one leg into that lifeline here within Microsoft 365. It communicates with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and in the end, it's going to be Microsoft Defender for Endpoint via the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint sensor that is going to, well, prohibit users from browsing web applications or cloud applications that we don't want our users to use. Now, I don't know about you, but if I think about this stuff and its capabilities, I am getting excited. And well, hopefully you guys are too. Now, if you are, thank you for the thumbs up, Andre. That is, yeah, I see that. I see everything. Now, this is, with this, we are close, but well, not yet as far as we could be, but we are at least close to getting where we want, because there is, well, like I'm starting to sound like Steve Jobs now. There's one more thing, and that one more thing is that Microsoft also comes with another component, and this is the final one. The final one, and that last component is called Microsoft Purview. Microsoft Purview. If you look into Microsoft Purview, actually, if you want to manage it, you need to be at compliance.microsoft.com. Microsoft Purview is all about compliance. Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, by the way, or sorry, Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps is found just as Defender for Endpoint, it's in security.microsoft.com as the management portal. Now, Purview is the compliance component. So Purview is, let's say, also known as the compliance center in Microsoft 365. Purview is about data classification. It's helping us to classify data. So basically, this means that we can look into a file and we can say, hey, this file contains some sensitive information for our organization. It may be sensitive in a sense of that this is secrets, like the recipe for Coca-Cola, or the new PlayStation 6 design or something. That could be like company-wide secret. Or data classification could be about does the file contain personal information, PII, personal identifiable information, or it contains financial info like credit card numbers or bank accounts, or it could contain health-related information like names of diseases or names of medication. Medication. So data classification is a way for us to identify what kind of data we can find in what kind of file or location, like a mailbox or in a SharePoint site or in a Teams environment or in OneDrive for Business. And then based on that, we can implement all kinds of, well, data protection mechanisms. One of the mechanisms non-related to this course is data retention, where we could go and say, hey, if a file contains, here in the Netherlands, for example, if a file contains data that can be related to research for cancer, then here in the Netherlands, we now have to save that data for at least 125 years. That is what data retention is. We are not allowed, and because of data retention, not able to delete that information within 125 years. It's actually quite a long time, but yeah, that's the new rules. Data classification can help us to do data retention, but one thing that I want to point out in let's say the subject of, well, modern workplace, is that one of the components of Purview, if data is classified, so if we know with what kind of data we are dealing, we can then go in and implement something called data loss prevention. Data loss prevention is about, we shortened this by the way to DLP. Data loss prevention is about making sure that users cannot accidentally leak data to locations that we don't want data to be leaked. For example, sending an email to someone outside of our own organization containing sensitive information. That is something that DLP can do. DLP also can do. DLP also works for Teams. So even in chat messages, you can be protected against yourself from accidentally sharing a credit card number via Teams chat. That is what DLP can do. However, there is one more DLP thing, and that is that there is DLP for endpoints. And the idea behind DLP for endpoints is that we can, what we can do here is we can prevent users from copying documents that contain sensitive information. For example, we can prevent them from copying those files to a USB drive or from uploading it to a certain website, like WeTransfer, for example, or we can prevent users from printing documents because based on the content. That is what DLP for endpoints can do. Just like Defender for Cloud Apps, DLP for Endpoint does not have direct communication with the client. DLP for Endpoint uses Microsoft Defender for Endpoint to communicate with that client. So here, if you check out configuration like this, then we can basically go in and say, hey, but these components, they are communicating with each other like this, and they exchange information in order to, well, make sure that at the device side, certain things are not happening or could be happening. And if I would go in and sort of make sure that this is the whiteboard here is a sort of complete in what we are going to do here, then we can say that this. Oh, I want to make this look better. If you check this out, then you can say that this the red. Oh, come on, wrong button. Where's my shift button? Here, maybe. Ah, it works. So let's just try again. Let's shift and go. Why? Here it works. This is weird. Oh, okay. Shift. Ah, now it works. So basically what we see here is that all of these components, they interact with each other. All of the components, they exchange information, they take their own role, they do what they need to do, but it's all connected, it's all related to each other, it's all, so we can exchange information from, well, from one place to the other. And when we think about Azure Active Directory, then, well, if you think about what Azure Active Directory's role here is, then Azure Active Directory is about identity management, and very important, protection. Azure Active Directory is also about application management and protection. And then in that case, you think about those enterprise applications here and the way that this is going to be implemented. So these two components, for example, they use, for example, the login.microsoftonline.com, which is an app for authentication and authorization. Also, we have conditional access, for example, which is a policy-based mechanism. It is all about policy-based mechanism to, well, allow or disallow or grant or deny access from a device by a certain user into the applications and data that we want to protect. So this user here could be signing in into the device. Using that device, the user may want to go in and connect to any of those cloud applications here, and then it's Active Directory here that uses sign-in capabilities for multi-factor, for example, and conditional access components for determining whether or not access should be allowed. That is where Azure Active Directory will be at that point. And well, the device itself here, is going to be managed by these different components to make sure that the device is well configured and used in the way that we want the device to be configured and used. So in this case, we talk about a device, it's managed. On the other hand, we can also say that a device, if you think about the bring your own device scenario, then we can also go in and say, yeah, okay, so a device could be used, but in this example, we can say that this is unmanaged. Now, unmanaged means that there is no Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Sensor, no Microsoft Mobile Device Management Client active. But if the user still wants to use this device to connect to the applications that contain our organizational data, then still Azure Active Directory is going to be involved. And then still, for example, conditional access can work. And multi-factor authentication is still there, for example. So that is how we can go in and make sure that, well, in both situations, our organizational data, our assets like a device or the user are going to be protected. Now, that is a lot, I know, but this is exactly what we are going to cover during this next few days in the device management masterclass. I can imagine that all of these products that I am mentioning, well, that might be a little bit might be a little bit much. So what you could do is maybe I'm not sure if you know this website, but I like it. The website is called m365maps.com. This web application, Microsoft365maps.com, shows all kinds of information about the licenses that you may need for certain products. And the nicest one that you can check, if you check out the Microsoft 365 Enterprise view here in landscape mode, this opens up a view. Let me zoom in a little bit. And it shows, for example, here Microsoft 365 E3 on the left-hand side, and what it contains. Oh, my mouse is a little bit sensitive when I want to do the zooming in Edge, but here we are. So Microsoft 365 contains Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Plan 1. It contains Office 365 and all kinds of components, Enterprise Mobility and Security, and its components, for example, Intune is part of that. Then we have Windows Enterprise E3, and you can also add into this equation Microsoft 365 E5, which is E3 plus everything mentioned, and it also contains some Office components, Enterprise Mobility and Security components, and Windows components. Now, one of the things that you may not, well, if there is anything here on this picture that is not clear, like, hey, you may want to get some more information about what endpoint analytics could be, being part of Intune Plan 1, which on itself is part of Enterprise Mobility Security E3, then you can just click that link and it will open up an informational page for you explaining the basics about what it is. So from now on, there can never be something unclear here, hopefully, because if you check out this website, for any type of license, there is a view here. You can also have, let's say, if you have customers that work with Microsoft 365 for business, premium, for example, those are the smaller organizations. You can open that up, and it explains exactly what is part of Microsoft 365 Business Premium. One of the things that is not yet clear in this website here is that Intune nowadays comes with different plans. Until like it's now, what is it, June 2023, until like a month or two ago, an Intune license was always just an Intune license, and it was never something weird or something. There was just one license. That's it. However, Microsoft recently started working with Intune add-ons. Now, here I am in the Intune portal, Intune.microsoft.com. I click on tenant administration, and then there's Intune add-ons. And here you can see that there is actually different versions of Intune. There is Intune Plan 1, which is sort of the default Intune capabilities. But now Microsoft, for example, also introduced Intune Plan 2. If you check out the details, Intune Plan 2 gets us extra stuff like tunneling for mobile applications, support for specialty devices like VR headsets that you can manage, which is the Microsoft HoloLens, conference room meeting devices, and so on, right? If you want to manage those devices, you would need Intune Plan 2. But Microsoft also has something now which is called the Intune Suite, which is sort of the most expensive version of Intune. And this comes with Intune Plan 2, as well as it comes with Endpoint Privilege Management. Endpoint Privilege Management is a solution where we can configure client devices to allow users to start only certain executables as admin. So if a user is signed in into his device as a normal user object, then with endpoint privilege management, which you can also purchase separately, we can control what apps are allowed to be started as an administrator by that user. That is one of the examples. Also, the remote help license is about, this is for support desk engineers to remotely take control of other Windows devices. You would need a special license for that, but in the Intune suite, it contains everything. Just mentioning that Intune suite is not part of Microsoft 365 E5. So even if you would have a Microsoft 365 E5 license, you would still need to purchase Intune Suite if it contains components that you think are necessary for your organization or for your customers. On a personal note, I don't like that. I don't like to be buying extra stuff. It's not that I don't want to pay for it. I would just like to have a license that just includes everything. So Microsoft should go and start releasing a Microsoft 365 E7 or something, or maybe even better, name it Microsoft 365 Ultimate. I would be happy to pay 100 euros per month for it, as long as it just contains everything that they have, like Teams Premium, Intune Suite should be part of this. There's actually a couple of other products that Microsoft has created related to security and compliance that are not part of E5. I want just to have everything in one license and just never think about missing out on things, just for, well, my purpose. But that is, well, unfortunately not yet part of Microsoft licensing. Microsoft 365 or m365maps.com is probably the best resource on the internet explaining what those licenses contain. What I also very much like about this web application, which is built by Aaron Dinich, some dude from Australia, it also comes with a feature matrix. And if you open up the feature matrix, it shows on the left-hand side all kinds of features of Microsoft 365. And on the right-hand side, it shows which licenses contain that feature. So for example, if I just want to go and compare E3 and 5 and Business Premium, for example, with each other, then here we can take them next to each other and we can just go and check out features and what the limitations are and if it's there or not, and so on. So very nice way if you need to compare different components if you need to compare different components, then this is what you want to be checking out here. m365maps.com. This is the first part of what we are going to discover. So this is the this is pretty much the overview of what we are going to check out in this course.